The translation of the Book of Mormon was a miraculous event that has captured the attention of both faithful members and critics of the Church for the last 200 years. In the next 5 minutes, I will attempt to show you how the events of the Book of Mormon translation show that the Book of Mormon was possible only by the miraculous power of God, and second, that the Lord works by faith to build His Church and provide miracles. Before we begin, I would like to establish that this is esoteric doctrine. Although the principles of seership, of miracles, and of the Book of Mormon, and the doctrine taught in the Book of Mormon are essential to our salvation, the exact events and methods of the translation of the Book of Mormon are not essential to our salvation. And now we begin. Let's cover the events of the translation. This can be more adequately covered in John W. Welch's The Miraculous Translation of the Book of Mormon. But for the purposes of this video, we will summarize the events of the translation as such. In 1827, Joseph obtains the plates from the angel Moroni. He begins translating from April 12, 1828 to June 14th of the same year, at which point Martin Harris loses the 116 translated pages and the book is taken from Joseph. The plates are returned on September 22nd, but translation does not recommence until March 1829, the process being finished in late June. President Nelson comments on this process in an address to new mission presidents in 1992. The manuscript was completed on June 30th of that year. Of course, not all of that time was spent working on the translation. The prophet and his scribes also took time to eat, to sleep, to seek employment, to receive the Aaronic and Melchizedek priesthoods, to make at least one and possibly 2 trips to Colesville 30 miles away, and to receive and record 13 revelations that are now sections of the Doctrine and Covenants, to move from Harmony to Fayette, to acquire the Book of Mormon copyright, to begin making arrangements for the publication of the Book of Mormon. Conservatively estimated, this left 65 or fewer working days on which the prophet and his scribes translated this book, which contains 531 pages in its current edition. That calculates to an average of 8 pages per day. Consider this when you translate a book, or as you schedule your own reading of the Book of Mormon. Added to this is the fact that Joseph was an unlearned man having only a 4th grade education, and was often described as very illiterate by his fellow men. And this, of course, shows how the Book of Mormon was a miraculous translation. The time frame and Joseph's own state as a translator both show this could only be done by the power of God. How exactly did this translation take place? We've mentioned before that Joseph was considered rather illiterate for his time. And the topic is further explored in John W. Welch's and Tim Rathbone's Book of Mormon translations by Joseph Smith, which relate various accounts from Joseph Smith's scribes. The accounts all evidence that Joseph dictated the accounts to his scribes, so he saw the words and he dictated them to someone else who would write them down. The Joseph Smith papers also give accounts of all of these scribes and their stories, showing that by the time the text of the Book of Mormon was finished, Smith had dictated portions to at least 7 scribes: Martin Harris, Emma Smith, Samuel Smith, Reuben Hale, Oliver Cowdery, John Whitmer, and Christian Whitmer. Cowdery penned more extant pages by far than all the other scribes combined. As for exactly how Joseph Smith translated, John Welch writes, "Most reports state that throughout the project Joseph used Nephite interpreters, or, for convenience, he would use a seer stone. Oliver Cowdery is reported to have testified in court that these tools enabled Joseph to read in English the reformed Egyptian characters which are engraved on the plates. While David Whitmer wrote that Joseph Smith would put the seer stone into a hat, put his face on the hat, drawing it closely around his face to exclude the light, and in the darkness the spiritual light would shine. A piece of something resembling parchment would appear, and on that appeared the writing." And there are many sources explaining the mechanics of how Joseph translated, though many of them are varying in details and were given far after the translation process had ended. What is most important to know, however, is that the ability to translate did not come from Joseph Smith, but was a gift granted him from God. This is shown in Doctrine and Covenants, section 3, verses 10 through 12, a revelation given to Joseph after his loss of the 116 pages. In it, the Lord states, "And thou art still chosen, and art again called to the work. Except thou do this, thou shalt be delivered up, and become as other men, and have no more gift. And when thou deliverest up that which God hath given thee sight, and power to translate, thou deliverest up that which was sacred into the hands of a wicked man." Here we see that God gave Joseph the power to translate. And in the following section, we'll see that he can give that power to others. And we read in D&C 9, verse 5, that the power to translate had been given to Oliver Cowdery. Here, the Lord states that Oliver was given the gift, but, quote, because you did not continue as you commenced when you began to translate, that I have taken away this privilege from you. And in this, we see that the gift to translate was something God had given man, so that they could bring forth the Book of Mormon. It was also something that God could take away. What is the central point? Well, that miracles come through faith, that they come from God. There is a source of the miraculous events in our life, and I want to make sure you understand that point. In fact, I want to make sure that you understand the two key concepts I brought up at the beginning of the video. First, that this process was miraculous, could only have been done by the power of God. This statement is elaborated in Elder Neal A. Maxwell's talk, which is titled By the Gift and Power of God, in which he cites the speed of translation, Joseph's illiteracy, and Joseph's unlearnedness as three evidences to why this could only be done by a miracle. And secondly, that the Lord works by faith to build his church and provide miracles. There are many ways that God could have brought forth the Book of Mormon. He could have brought a learned man in to translate it. He could have given Joseph Smith the power to translate it himself, or the knowledge. But God chose to work through faith, through a miracle, through a way that forced man to depend on him. And that is a principle we can learn for our own lives. And if you take one thing away from this, I want you to know that though the exact process of the Book of Mormon translation is unknown to us, we know some details. We can know that it was a product of God's miracles, and that we can gain a greater testimony of seership and of God's actions on this earth to help us gain salvation from it. Thank you.